thank you. That means you've got the recording going?
We do.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. It is Monday night, May 18th, and it is 6:30 p.m. and I will call our Lakeville City Council meeting to order. Just a few reminders before we do roll call. Please mute your audio when you're not speaking. Just helps to reduce any potential for feedback. Please don't use the chat function. And council members, if you could raise your hand, Mr. Miller and I will monitor who would like to speak, and I will, as in the past, take extra effort to ask if there's any additional comments. And with that, Shar, roll call, please. Oh, excuse me. We'll do our moment of silence and the flag pledge. So let's do that first. So we'll take a moment of silence, and then we will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, now we will go to roll call, please.
Volk. Here. Anderson.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here.
Collier.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Thank you very much. And our item 3 on our agenda is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for us to hear from citizens and from residents and business owners in terms of comments you'd like to make to the city staff or to us as city council, questions, comments. We allow up to 3 minutes for these, and it can be on any matter that you would choose. And if you are called upon and have a comment, please state your name and your address clearly for the record at the beginning of your comment. If you are on the call for matters associated with the situation with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we have a couple resolutions that will be coming to the table tonight, you certainly are welcome to make a comment now if you'd like. Otherwise, you can wait until we get to those agenda items, and I will ask for a public comment at that time. Is there anyone at this time that would like to make a citizen comment? Please speak up. Okay, hearing no one. Mr. Miller, is there any additional agenda information?
Mayor, Council, the only addition is late this afternoon, we did post a second resolution related to the COVID-19 item. That was added to the online version of the agenda later this afternoon as well. So it's on the online version. It should be in your packet.
Okay, thank you very much. And I did notice that it was out online as well. So thank you, staff, for doing that. So with that, we will move to presentations. And this evening we have our Public Works quarterly report, and Director Omi is with us. And so I will turn it over to you, sir.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Can I get the PowerPoint up? Can I get the first slide? That's the last slide. There you go. Okay. So again, this is thanks again, Mayor, City Council members. This is the first quarter report for Public Works. Can I have the next slide, please? So I'd like to start off by just getting an update on some of our transportation projects that we're working on. The first project is the 2020 street reconstruction project. This is a 10.6 miles worth of local streets that we're reconstructing this year. It's right now we're ahead of schedule, and hopefully we'll stay that way. It's broken into 13 different project phases. The first project phase we actually paved last Friday, and we're patching those driveways this week in that phase. The second phase, we're reclaiming those streets this week, and we'll hope to pave those streets this week as well. In the third phase, curb and gutter is being removed, and we're pouring that curb and gutter back this week. And in the fourth phase, right now we're removing or improving the storm sewer system and water main improvements in this area as well. And the project is anticipated to be completed in October. Next page, next slide, please. So County Road 50 project has started up again. As you know, that project was substantially completed last year around in November, but there's still some work left to do. The contractor began this last week regrading some of the trails in the area. He poured some ADA ramps and is working on mainline improvements as well. This week, the irrigation system at Aronson Park is going to be installed. And then next Tuesday, May 26th, County Road 50 from Highview Avenue to Cedar Avenue will be closed for paving the trail and the roadway in that section. And County Road 50 will be reopened in June 19th, just a few weeks from now. Next slide, please. The 170th Street Improvement Project, that's about a mile's worth of street reconstruction project that we're working on this summer. It's from Flagstaff Avenue to Pilot Knob Road. The construction started on April 27th and includes water main replacements, spot curb and gutter improvements, storm sewer improvements, pedestrian ramps, and trail improvements as well. The contractor right now is wrapping up installing the water main, and he's working on storm sewer improvements. And we hope to have the project completed at the end of this summer, August 28th. Next slide, please. The 179th Street project is underway as well. The first phase of the project is to reconstruct the section of 179th Street right near Cub Foods entrance. That project, or that section of road, will be opened on June 20th, and then the contractor is scheduled to close the intersection of Flagstaff and 179th Street on June 8th for starting construction of the roundabout. And that intersection will be reopened on August 20th or August 20th for traffic and for school. And the project will be substantially completed in October as well. Next slide, please. This year's Miscellaneous Project contains 24 projects, small projects throughout the community. The contractor right now, or last week, completed patching in the ADA ramps in the downtown area on Holt Avenue and completed the sidewalk replacement and pouring the sidewalk on Market Plaza. This was the sidewalk had some tripping hazards to it, so we needed to replace that sidewalk. The plantings that will be going back into the Market Plaza sidewalk are scheduled to be planted in June, and the entire project will be completed at the end of August. Next slide, please. Moving on to the street division, this year's snow and ice control operations were down a lot compared to the last 2 years. As you can see here, callouts we only had 14 callouts all of January through April. We didn't have one call out in March, and we just had one call out in April. So we hope to see some good cost savings this year from the snow and ice operations, depending upon how November and December goes. Next slide, please. Street Division also completed the street sweeping this year in record time. We started early in March because of the nice weather that we had, and we finished in April. And we also completed our spring tree trimming program project early this year as well. Next slide, please. Moving on to the utility division, water production is up slightly from past 2 years, we're about 3.7% above our water production from last year. For the last 2 years, this can be attributed to a drier spring that we've had than most and community growth. Next slide, please. We're currently wrapping up the new installation of our new SCADA system. That's the supervisory control and data acquisition system that monitors and controls all the sewer and water functions throughout the community. The original program needed to be updated, which was not compatible with the new Windows, and the new system is more robust in terms of cybersecurity as well. Next slide, please. Staff has completed the annual well rehabilitation program or project for this year. This year we removed pumps and motors from 2 wells. This work we do that on every well every 8 years or so to reduce the risk of well failure during high peak demand periods. Next slide, please. Moving on to the environmental resources area, city was awarded $380,000 by the DNR to restore a 1-mile reach of Middle Creek that has shown high rates of erosion and limited aquatic habitat. And banks will be stabilized in this area, and natural prairie buffer will be added. The restoration will take place in coordination with the Pinnacle Reserve Development. Next slide, please. In November, the city was awarded $36,000 by the Met Council to support in conducting irrigation audits and focused on HOAs. The audits will start in June and wrap up in August. And then next year, the HOAs can apply for some more grant dollars for improvements to their system. The goal of this project is to incentivize HOAs to reduce irrigation water use in their system. Next slide, please. Again, let's see here. For the 4th consecutive year, the city was a recipient of the Dakota County Aquatic Invasive Species Grant. This year's funds will go towards evaluating the options for installing a permanent rough fish barrier at East Lake, treating nuisance populations of curly pondweed and Eurasian milfoil in Orchard and Marion Lake, conducting a monthly AIS searches in Orchard and Marion Lake, funding watercraft inspection in Orchard and Marion Lakes. In addition, environmental staff has again contracted with Blue Water Science to perform vegetation surveys and fish surveys, sediment analysis, and other lake management activities in most lakes in the community. Early vegetation surveys by Blue Water Science is already underway. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, due to COVID-19, that forced us to cancel Watershed Cleanup Day and the Earth Day celebration, the city's largest voluntary and public outreach event. But staff did found a way to celebrate Earth Day's 50th anniversary. A website was created that compiled 10 environmentally focused challenges aimed at getting residents out in nature. Over 3,600 people visited the website, and area middle and elementary schools teachers thanked us for providing additional curriculum for their classes. The city also was involved with or sold 84 rain barrels and compost bins through this program, through the event, and we sold 84 rain barrels and 74 compost bins at a discounted rate to Dakota residents. And also tree sales during this time period were very successful. This spring we sold 363 trees and shrubs at a discounted rate for property owners. Next slide, please. So So I'm happy to report that the city received a $25,000 DNR grant to complete inventory of ash trees and right-of-way in public spaces. This inventory will be conducted along mainly I-35 corridor. This is the last area of the community that has not been surveyed for ash trees. This will give the city the data on how to best manage the ash trees in this area. Next slide, please. So last year, 780 park and boulevard trees were injected to help protect these ash trees against amaryl ash borer. 220 property owners took advantage of the program and injected over 724 private trees on their private property. The property owners took advantage of this program and at the discounted rate for injection that the city receives. We hope to continue this same program and reach those same numbers that we did in 2019. Next slide, please. So for trees that are not good enough in condition to be considered for an injection program, we're systematically removing a lot of those trees before the amaryl ash borer gets them. So this winter, we removed 109 ash trees and stumps in boulevards and park properties throughout the community, and we completed this work on April 30th. So next slide, please. So that completes the first quarter updates and report for Public Works, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you very much, Paul. Council, any comments, questions for our Director of Public Works?
Ellier.
Okay.
Ellier.
Luke.
Yep, thanks. Thank you. Mr. Romy, two questions. One, do we conduct the irrigation audits in the city as well, or have we done that in the past for parks and those type of things?
Yep. So we have conducted irrigation audits for ourselves at City Hall and CMF and some other facilities as well. So we're monitoring that too, and we're looking at some best management practices for irrigation for our systems as well.
Okay. And then the other question, this is not a question, more of a comment. It was nice to see all the different grants that you guys had applied for and were awarded. So good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions, Council? Hearing none, I'll just add my thanks as well for the work on the grants, Paul, and for your team. And that's a good effort. And thank you for the great report. And I'm glad that our snow season was not as harsh as it's been the last couple of years. So we'll hope for the November and December to be the same way.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We will move on to our next item, which is our consent agenda. These are matters that we consider to be more routine and in the management and administration of the city. Mr. Miller, is there anything you'd like to highlight on the consent agenda this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one item tonight, and that's item 6E. As required by ordinance, the City Council is required to confirm the choice from the Planning Commission on who they want to be their chair this year. They have elected Pat Kaluza to serve as chair. This will be his third and final year as chair, and we appreciate his willingness to step up in that position.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience or council, any comments, questions on any consent agenda items at this time? Councilmember Lee.
I do have a couple questions on item 6C regarding the water tower recoding.
Okay, so why don't we pull that one off and we'll talk about it as a separate item. Okay. Any other comments, questions on consent agenda items? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda excluding item C?
Mayor, I move adoption of the consent agenda minus 16, or 6C, excuse me, 6C.
C.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Shar, roll call, please.
Volk. Aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
Hellier.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries, and we'll move to have a discussion regarding the contract with Classic Protective Coatings on the water tower. Councilmember Lee, would you like to please start off with your questions?
Sure. So I guess this one struck me as one in a year where we're kind of worried about incoming revenues and expenses with COVID-19. I guess I'm wondering about the urgency of this particular project and how much the project this year would delay the recoating of the entire tank going forward.
Okay, Mr. Miller, could you respond to that, or?
I can respond to the financial part, and then I'll let Mr. Omi talk about the technical part. It should be noted that these are being paid for through water funds. And so from a staff perspective, we're not as concerned about any shortfall in the water fund. As you could tell by Mr. Omi's quarterly presentation, we're actually selling more water and producing more water than we are in past years and the same quarter. So that part isn't as concerning to me from a budgetary standpoint, but I'll let Mr. Omi talk about the technical question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Councilmember Lee. So the project will be recoating the exterior of the tank, basically the vertical portion of the tank. So we're not planning to recoat the whole tank, but the portion that we are recoating, should last at least another 10 to 15 years longer than if we don't coat it right now. So we will get some longevity out of the tank. We might have to, recoat a portion of the tank down the road a ways, but we don't have to do the whole tank. So it will lengthen the longevity of the tank in whole, but we might have to come in, in subsequent years and do some minor patches like we have done in other tanks. So it will extend the life of the tank. I mean, I'm just guessing, at least another 5 to 10 more years on the portion that we're working on.
And then just to follow up with the tank mixer, is that not a standard item that's put in water tanks or water towers?
Well, it's becoming more of a Councilman Lee. It's becoming more of an industry standard. We have over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen tanks that have problems with icing, and this is our standard practice that we're putting in every time a tank goes down for maintenance. We're putting in these mixers if they don't have the mixer.
Thank you.
Okay, does that answer your questions, Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Okay. With that, do we have enough information that someone would have a motion to approve the contract? Lee.
Move to award contract to Classic Protective Coatings Incorporated in the amount of $86,950 for the recoating the Kenrick Water Tower City Project 2018.
Second. There is a second by Councilmember Wheeler. Any further discussion? With that, we will go to roll call vote, please.
Anderson,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
Hellier,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Volk. Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries, and we will move on to our next item, which is a resolution approving Launch Park Second Edition Preliminary Plat. And I believe we have with us Dan Reagan with Launch Properties to talk about this building project. Mr. Reagan, are you with us? Otherwise, if not, we will go to Mr. Olson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I saw Mr. Reagan on the roster. I don't know if he's just muted or, but he was on the call earlier here. Let me see if he's still here.
It looks like he dropped off. Why don't you go ahead and go, Dave?
Okay, that's fine. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm pleased tonight to talk about another new project in the industrial park. This one happens to be Launch Park Second Edition. If we could start the PowerPoint, please. I've got about a half a dozen slides or so to go over this, and we'll open it up for any questions. Nope, wrong one.
There we go.
Give us 1 second. The cable room is working on it.
Just some general background, council, while they're getting that queued up. This is the area of Launch Park that was started to develop in 2017. Council approved a tax increment financing project as well as a public improvement project to extend water and sewer utilities down to the southern end of this property. And it was also a property that some of you may recall was annexed to the city a number of years ago. This property was previously in Eureka Township, and about just under 100 acres of it was agreed to be annexed between an agreement between the city and Eureka Township. I didn't look that up, but I think it was approximately 10 years ago or so now. Doesn't seem like it, but so, let's see if they've got that going there.
Dave, it sounds like they might not have received that PowerPoint. We're just going to have to go through the packet.
Sure. Okay. All the materials that are in the PowerPoint are in your packet. The property zoning is I2 industrial. It is has been, and when it was annexed to the city was rezoned to I2. Again, the property is directly across the street and to the north of Launch Park First Edition, which was again constructed in 2017. The area that's being platted right now this year is the a 54-acre unplatted parcel on the north side of 222nd Street. You can see in the aerial photograph in your packet that the 287,000 square foot building that was built a couple of years ago is on just south of this second edition. The lot that's being platted now will be directly across the street from the building that was built in 2017. This whole property was part of a AUAR that was approved by the city council several years ago, and it provided the master plan for how this area was going to develop, and it shows again the existing building that was built in 2017 and where we're going to be developing now. The preliminary plat sheet in your packets shows the footprint of the 150,000 square foot office warehouse building that is being built right at the corner of Cedar Avenue and 222nd. And keep going, one more, please. There we go. Shows the building that would be constructed as well as the stormwater treatment that's going to be occurring north of the building on the north end of the site. The access off 222nd are going to line up with the accesses that were built for Launch Park First Edition. We'll go to the, and this is the same slide that was just up on your screen. Next slide, please. There's extensive landscaping that's being proposed, and and if Mr. Reagan is able to join us again, but what I can tell you is that of the 150,000 square foot building that is going to be constructed, 2/3 of the building, or 100,000 square feet, has already been leased to a company called Sweet Harvest Foods. They are a food company currently based in Rosemont. They have a facility in a manufacturing facility down in Cannon Falls and a couple other locations. And this will be a warehouse and distribution center for them. And they've got a very good website if you get a chance to check it out, but they're in the honey business. And so they are one of the larger distributors of honey in the United States. And they decided they wanted a new location. Their location in Rosemont was a leased location as well. So they reached an agreement with Launch Properties to build or lease 2/3 or 100,000 square feet of the new building that is being proposed. The next slide, please. The building will be comparable to the first Launch Park building. It'll be a precast metal building, 32-foot clear, which allows for substantial vertical storage within the distribution center. The building, again, is going to be complementary and not exactly the same, but very similar to the building that was built. And you should have a couple sheets that show the south and west. And then if you can go to the next slide, please. There'll be the north and east perspectives of the building, and which is the side that the dock doors will be located on the building, which will be north and east. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at a public hearing on May 7th and was unanimously recommended for approval. Park Rec Natural Resources Committee reviewed and made a unanimous recommendation for approval at their meeting on May 6th. The preliminary plat is being brought to you tonight. We're working on and we'll hopefully finalize the final plat and development contract for this project in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully be able to bring those final approvals back to you on the June 1st meeting. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
This is a very exciting project. I did see that Mr. Reagan has rejoined us. So I guess, Council, we could take any questions now, or we could let our applicant speak if he wants to add anything to Mr. Olson's comments. Dan?
Yes.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, and thank you, Mr. Olson, for that introduction. Had some serious technical difficulties here this evening and ended up having to uninstall Chime from my computer and reinstall it. I think I was logged in, but I couldn't see anything, but reinstalled, and here everyone is. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
And we're happy to be in and applying for our Phase 2 building of Launch Park, which we started back in 2017 with Menasha and McNeilis. As Mr. Olson said, this building is going to be 150,000 feet. To most people, you won't be able to tell any difference at all from the Phase 1 building. It's got different dimensions, so we're a little more than half the size of the Phase 1 building. So this is a little less deep from front to back. This is 210 feet deep versus 260 feet deep. And then it's not quite as long from end to end. 150,000 square feet overall, the clear height, the functionality, the look is all pretty much exactly the same as the Phase 1 building. The one difference being that this building's front facade faces south, and the north facade, where all the loading is, faces north. So we kind of carried the design and the look and the feel of the different colors on the building around on the loading dock side as well, to a little bit more appealing to the eye for cars that are traveling south on Cedar Avenue. The tenant is Sweet Harvest Foods. They're a growing honey-based sweetener organization that is coming here from Rosemount, where they've determined that their space is obsolete. So they're looking to get into a new institutional quality building like we're going to build for them here. They're going to take 100,000 feet of the building, and we're going to have an additional 50,000 feet on the end that we can lease either to them in the future when they need to grow into it, or to another tenant or tenants who would occupy that space. But the long-term vision for Sweet Harvest Foods includes a lot of growth. They really like the labor pool and the existing base of all the businesses, and just the place to do business environment like Lakeville provides. So my compliments to staff and all the elected officials in the community for doing a great job of doing what we can to attract businesses like this, because it's exciting. they're taking 100,000 feet today, but I think that the longer term game plan is for them to grow substantially within the park. We've got the land and the ability to accommodate those needs in the future. So we are very excited about the project. Would like to break ground on it as soon as we can and deliver it here before the snow flies, before Thanksgiving hits and asphalt plants shut down and things like that. So we're excited to get started, and we appreciate being here with you guys tonight.
Mayor, you're muted.
Well, you probably watched my lips, so you could read my lips and know that I asked if you had any comments or questions at this time. Councilmember Lee.
This is more of just a question of curiosity. So with a facility like this, as tenants change, how easily are you able to change the square footage for new tenants as they come in? Is that wall movable to accommodate for growth? Is that a pretty standard thing?
Good question, Councilmember Lee. These, our game plan with these buildings, I think in total on our land holdings here, we could probably build up to about 1.5 million square feet. And the way that we design these buildings is such that they're very flexible for a wide variety of uses and a wide variety of sizes. So we're very specific on how deep the buildings are front to back, exactly all of the functionality that we put into these, where the column spacing lines up, and the dimensions of the structural steel within the building, the number of dock doors, the number of drive-in doors, the LED lighting with motion sensors, where we have entry features on the front of the building is all studied in depth so that we can now and in the future chop the building up into multiple tenants and be able to accommodate them. So this one here, we've got it designed that we can easily accommodate tenants anywhere from about 30,000 square feet all the way up to 150,000 square feet if they were to take the whole building. And we can put the demising walls they're simple, uninsulated, fireproof walls that go from the floor slab all the way to the deck. And when you need to, shift tenants around or accommodate a new tenant, let's say Sweet Harvest Foods wants to expand into the some bays next door on the other side of the current demising wall. A lot of times for someone like that, what you'll do is you'll just cut a couple of big openings in that demising wall. So rather than tearing the whole thing down and then erecting a brand new one, which probably costs $100,000, you'll just cut big openings in those demising walls, and that'll allow them to go back and forth, on either side of the wall. But in the future, let's say they move out and expand into a bigger building or something like that, and that space then becomes available and we need to demise it down smaller than 100,000 square feet. In that instance, yeah, you'd erect a new demising wall and just make it line up such that the new tenant has a good front entry and an obvious place for them to call their front door.
Very interesting. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions, council? If not, I will go to our audience. And is there any comments, questions from the audience regarding this project? Hearing none. Councilmember Wheeler.
Mayor, move to approve a resolution approving the Launch Park Second Edition preliminary plat.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Shar, roll call, please.
Wheeler.
Aye.
Hellier.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Volk. Volk. Aye. Anderson.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Reagan, for your continued investment in the city of Lakeville. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening, and we're excited about the project. Looking forward to getting it going. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Hellier.
Just waving goodbye.
Oh, okay. We'll move on to our next item, which is regarding the Nob Hill North preliminary plat. And I believe we have Warren Israelson with us. Sir, if you'd like to speak a little bit about this project, it would be great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Warren. Thank you.
All right. My kids set this up. I just had to figure it out here. So, yeah, this is a Nob Hill. It's our second phase, I guess, the project we started last year. The part where seeking preliminary approval is north of 179th and west of Pilot Knob Road. Last year we started the first phase, and I drove through it last week and counted 37 starts and 9 additional staked lots. So that's a total 46 in less than a year. So we're very pleased with the progress so far. And so we're probably not going to do another phase this year, but we do need to do a whole bunch of grading over there because we are obligated to extend 179th Street west through the Autumn Meadows subdivision this year. And to do that, we got a big hill in the way, and all that dirt's got to go to this next phase here. So we're going to be doing a lot of grading all summer long, getting ready to finalize lots next year out there. I think we have 36 single family lots proposed and 42 detached townhomes. The detached townhomes are slab on grade, and the single family lots will be primarily 2-story walkouts, similar to what's been built in the first phase. So other than that, I'm here for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Council. Any questions from Mr. Israelson at this time? Otherwise, we will go to our staff report. Any questions? Okay, we will go to our staff report with Mr. Maury.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So as you heard Mr. Israelson say, this is the preliminary plat for Nob Hill North, which includes 36 single family lots and 42 detached townhome lots, and also 2 outlots. And it's on approximately 30 acres of land, as you can see from the location map. It's just west of Pilot Knob Road, and it is north of what will be the extension of 179th Street and south of the Country View Manufactured Home Park. Next slide, please. The current property is currently entirely zoned RM1, which does allow single family homes and detached townhomes. However, with the zoning ordinance update, which includes an update to our zoning map as well, the westerly half will be rezoned to RS4, which is single family residential district. And that is the lot size standards that the developer is proposing for the west half of this preliminary plat. Next slide, please. As you can see from this exhibit, the project will be developed in 2 phases. Phase 1 is the easterly portion closest to Pilot Knob Road. That is the detached townhomes. So the 42 detached townhomes will be developed first with phase 1. Phase 2, which is the westerly portion, will be the 36 single family lots. You can also see from this exhibit the 2 outlots. Outlot A, which is in the very southwest corner of the preliminary plat, will be used for future park area. That area will be added to land already dedicated to the west to create a larger area for a neighborhood park at a future date. Outlot B is located just east of that, still within the single family portion, phase 2. and that includes the stormwater basin, which will also be deeded to the city with the final plat of that phase. Next slide, please. This is the preliminary plat again, shows a little bit more detail about outlots A and B. Next slide, please. This is the area of the detached townhome portion of the development. There's going to be significant landscaping, which will be part of that particular phase of development within the common area HOA lots. And will provide a buffer for the property along the north plat boundary adjacent to Country View Mobile Home Park. The developer is also planning to construct a privacy fence as well along the north boundary of the plat. Next slide, please. This is the grading plan for the project. As you heard Mr. Israelson say, they are hoping to get a grading permit following preliminary plat approval this evening, so they can continue work on constructing 179th Street, which they have started with the Nob Hill first phase development that's south of 179th Street. Eventually, 179th will be constructed by KJ Walk between Pilot Knob Road and its current terminus approximately at Fieldcrest Avenue. And this will basically provide the last connection and link for 179th between Cedar and Pilot Knob Road. Next slide, please. And this shows a little bit more of the landscaping that's proposed along the north side of the plat adjacent to the detached townhome portion of this development. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing at their May 7th meeting for this preliminary plat. There was no public comment at the meeting, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval subject to 7 stipulations. The Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources Committee also unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat at their meeting on May 6th. So in summary, staff is recommending approval of the resolution approving the Nob Hill North preliminary plat, which includes the 7 stipulations recommended by the Planning Commission, and I can stand for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Maury. Council, any questions for either staff or the developer? I am not seeing any. Is there anyone in the audience that has any comments this evening regarding this project? Hearing none. Is there a motion, council, regarding this project?
Mayor, move to approve a resolution approving the Nob Hill North preliminary plat.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Char, roll call, please.
Hellier.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Volk. Aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
Motion carries. Mr. Israelson, thank you so much for your continued investment in the city of Lakeville and providing housing for people that enjoy living here. Thanks. Looks like a great project.
Thank you very much as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I know. See you next time.
Yep, we will.
It won't be long.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
We will continue on to our next item on the agenda, which is update regarding COVID-19 city operations. And we've got a number of components of this discussion in our packet. There's 4 parts that are outlined, but before we get to those, I'd just like to turn it over to Mr. Miller, who might have some overall comments for us as council, as well as our residents, about how things are going at the city.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. As the Mayor mentioned, there are 4 items that staff identified or were provided by council that we'd like some direction or guidance on tonight. But before we get to that, just an update on city operations. All city operations continue with the City of Lakeville, police, fire, Public Works, City Hall operations continue. Staff is still available by phone call and appointment visits as well as email. And obviously, if you call 911, our public safety folks will respond as normal. So we are continuing to monitor direction from the state in terms of how we are going to return to as much as normal operations at the city. And we are in the process of reviewing amongst staff a return to work plan. And we'll be hopefully finalizing that here this week or next week with the goal of trying to get back to some sort of in-person service level here shortly. And we'll continue to monitor that and update the city's website and our communication outlets as best we can.
Thank you very much for the update. Council, any overall questions for Mr. Miller at this time? I just want to add my word of thanks, Justin, to you and the entire team for leading us through this. And I know that it's been a bunch of change that has happened, and it takes a spirit of flexibility and agility and willingness to do things a little different. And I don't think that we as residents of Lakeville have noticed, we haven't missed a beat. And I know that inspections are still happening and clean water is coming into our taps. And so I just want to express our gratefulness to you and your team for continuing to keep things operating during this time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move, if there's not any questions at this time, we'll move on to our first item on our list here that staff provided, which is to continue our conversation around the Antlers Park and Orchard Lake beaches. We had a pretty significant conversation at our last meeting and said that we would bring this back to the table this time. Of course, just to remind us, the beaches normally would be opening coming up here toward Memorial Day. And so no action would be to obviously to continue to have them open. And I will just turn it to us now to have some conversation and ask questions or share your thoughts in terms of our beaches opening up for the summer along with our parks. Thoughts, comments, questions? Councilmember Volk.
So my only comments would be that for us to monitor the situation of having both beaches open, and just in case people can't follow the rules of social distancing or run into too many issues that we can't foresee now, that the council would be open to updates and discussing the beaches as a group at a work session or at a meeting, et cetera, with staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I will just add that I had the opportunity last Friday to meet with Police Chief Jeff Long as well as with Mr. Miller, and I appreciated that conversation. I do think there is some unique challenges that we face, of course, with the pandemic and also just with the parks in general. And I would suggest that we are cognizant that the resources that our police department needs to continue their good work is something that we may need to be talking more about and ensuring that we have supplied to them, whether it's for protective equipment or whether it might be for extra hours for our CSOs as we move into the warmer weather. And we're going to get a read pretty quickly as the looks like warm weather might be here in about a week, and we'll get a read pretty quickly about what the level of intensity is. I know I support opening the beaches up, but I appreciate Councilmember Volk, your comment that we need to be working together and good partners here as we look at how we're resourcing this and supporting our team through this process. Thank you very much for your comment. Other comments, Councilmember Hellier?
Yeah, thanks. I agree. I think, we can just continue with the normal plan. But to your point about equipment, I think Chief Long is on. Have there been any requests from the chief or the department related to things that we need to purchase or think about, or is that still, maybe this is a question for Mr. Miller, do we feel like we're okay with current supply? I mean, not just related to this, but just in general for police and fire and folks.
You really want to ask police and fire if they want more stuff?
Well,
I think no, that's just in jest. But I know
Yeah.
Chief Long's on, and I do believe that they are, at least for the time being, well suited in terms of PPE. That's going to be a continuous supply and resupply scenario that they're going to have to go through. But I don't know if Chief Long, if you wanted to add anything else to that.
Sure. Thank you for asking. Council, we are doing well with masks for the time being. Our main concern is not knowing where this is going to go and not knowing how many masks we're going to need and the disinfectant time it takes for the N95 masks to be cleaned. But currently we're sitting good, or we're sitting fine. The hope is that we don't need to use them, but we'll go through our supply very quickly if things take a turn for the worse.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lee.
So I guess when considering this issue, I've been pretty undecided on the correct approach. I think to date, the city has done what it can to relieve the economic pressure and socio-emotional pressure. For example, the parks were open, and I think we saw some positive outcomes for our community with that decision. To me, it's interesting that the guidelines provided by the executive order, the 2056, talks about outdoor recreational facilities and how it does not include facilities that involves gatherings of more than 10 people in close proximity, mini golf, pools, commercial outdoor racetracks, zoos, concert venues, etc. It seems like it's an oversight not to include beaches in there, particularly because I'm not confident that all patrons are going to strictly follow the MDH, CDC, and DNR recommendations any better at a beach than they would at a pool or a mini golf course. But, or I guess I should say, in addition, I do think that opening our beaches will create some additional risk for public safety and attracting unnecessary visitors from long distances, and even potentially detrimentally impacting the goals from our public health officials that they've been working on over the last couple of months. And I think at the moment, where we stand with COVID-19, because it's so widely unknown, I would actually prefer to delay the opening of the beaches from a personal standpoint. But I also believe that we have to create an atmosphere that provides people the freedom and the right to make choices for themselves and keep themselves accountable for their actions. So for that reason, I do recommend that we continue to open our beaches as planned, with the understanding that this isn't a free pass, and that our community expects its citizens to be responsible to everyone around them. And to what other council members have said, I think we do need to continue to monitor the situation. And if for some reason it becomes imperative for us to close the beaches, if Dakota County, for example, sees an uptick in COVID-19 cases, and we can somehow track that to our decisions with the beaches, I think we will need to reevaluate our public space decision in the future. So I guess that's where I stand on it at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Lee. Other comments, thoughts? I will go to the public. I don't know if there's anyone on that would like to speak to this matter in terms of the beaches. If you'd like to share any comments at this time, please speak up. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So Mr. Miller and Chief Long, you know, we've been talking about this for a few weeks, and I expect you've been thinking some about how we go forward with this, you know, from a signage standpoint. And I don't know, Chief, if there's a need to increase the number of CSO hours. Could you just talk about how we kind of have some thoughts of how we can move into this? What kind of signage, how much signage would we put up and whatever?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Mayor. As far as added hours and so forth, I appreciated the discussion we had last Friday. It's going to be very difficult to do anything at a beach that's crowded other than just provide a presence. And hopefully that would deter some activity. But we know from past experience that the spring is usually a busy time at the beach. It tends to be younger people that we've seen during this pandemic tend to be a little bit less careful. It would be difficult to say that we're actually going to try to enforce social distancing or gatherings of more than 10 people in a group there. So probably the best thing we could do would be to put a CSO there in the parking lot just so people see a presence. It would give them an opportunity, people to talk to us if they need to. But actually sending any officers or CSOs into that mix, you know, I don't know what we would educate them on. They're sitting at a beach with a lot of people, so it would be difficult. Yeah. But that's where we stand. You know, we can certainly provide a presence, and that's what we would do. And I do believe some signage would help. But other than that, that's what we'll do.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Hellier.
Chief, to that, have you had any internal discussions about utilizing the reserves and bringing them back in for some of these type of, you know, if they're just going to be sitting in a parking lot? I'm just wondering, you know, if that's something that has been just thought about or discussed.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, council member. We have had that discussion. The concern is how, if we can adequately protect them, if we have the equipment for them, if it's in our best interest to be sharing that equipment that might be needed at a later time. We have had some reserves that have expressed an interest of not working during the pandemic for fear, which is understandable. That is something we could look at. I would have a real concern though about putting a reserve into an environment such as that when we know that there could be issues with that. But I appreciate the comment, and we will definitely continue to look into it. It's just a matter of finding the right way to use them.
I appreciate, Chief, your thinking about all this, and also your full team. I mean, again, this has been a really unique, unsettled situation. I know we're all kind of thinking on our feet a little bit on some things, and this, you know, opening the parks as we did a couple weeks ago, a little farther, and this now just adds other dimensions to it. But I'm grateful for the work that you folks all do, and as other council members have already said, I mean, if we find ourselves in unfortunate situation, you know, we're just going to need to put our heads back together and figure out how we respond to that. I appreciate Councilmember Lee's comment. I think as residents hear this meeting and hear us talk about this, the important thing here is we're relying on individual responsibility, and we need to be respectful and of others. And I hope that just as most people have been doing on parks and trails, that we will do the same thing with this and enjoy the natural resources we have, and not take advantage or create challenges with other people. So that would be my hope and prayer. So what I've heard from council is to stay the course unless somebody wants to speak up and correct me. And so I don't believe there's any action necessary at this time. And we look forward to support you, Chief Long, and Mr. Miller and the team as we move into this and getting the signage up and whatever else we need to do. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to our next item, which is a resolution that staff has done some good work on in terms of helping to provide kind of a relief valve for our businesses. And I'm going to let Mr. Miller talk about this, and then we can have some discussion. Justin, you need to unmute.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
Mayor and Council, we've started to get some requests from businesses, and we expect we will get some more, depending on how more guidance comes from the state. But we know that retail establishments are being asked to reopen in ways that might diminish their capacity. And one way to help alleviate some of that would be to provide some relief for them, either in drive-up areas and parking lots and yard areas that typically we would not allow business to occur. We feel like during this time, something temporary in nature would be appropriate, especially during the nice weather hours when people can enjoy being outside. And so tonight before you is a draft policy that our staff put together. And basically what it says is that any business located in a commercial or industrial zone may establish drive-up or drive-through areas, customer ordering, waiting or pickup areas, or customer seating or service areas on its property to facilitate the safe commercial activity conducted with state, federal orders and guidelines. It also says that this would not need any variances or further city approvals unless it goes into something that might require building code issues, and then that would require an approval from the city. We also say that this does require approval of the property owner. If the business is leasing property, it does need to have the approval of the property owner. And we also ask that they provide or prepare a traffic management plan and provide on-site traffic and operational management to help alleviate any concerns. Further, we would not allow anything to block ADA or fire code issues. So with that, staff would recommend that this actually be approved in the form of a motion tonight to have a little bit more, I would say, gravitas from the city as opposed to just being something that staff put together. And I'd be happy to answer any questions as well as I believe Mr. Olson is still on the line as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll start off with just one quick question. So in the last paragraph, as far as how long this policy would continue, what state of emergency is this referring to, the cities or the states?
I would say both.
Okay, do we need clarity to that? I'm just wondering, I just want to make sure that we don't get trapped somehow.
I think either way, Mayor, it's going to take a city council action. So it'll come back to the city council for repeal unless it goes through the extent of the calendar year. But if you wanted to say state or local action, that would be fine. I believe that's what our city attorney is going to suggest.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute fast enough.
Okay.
I would agree.
So if we said or termination of the local state of emergency.
That seems appropriate that you were following your emergency related to your policies.
That's what makes sense to me. Okay. Okay. Council, other questions, comments on this? Hellier.
So is the intent for this, when we say customer seating, does that include restaurants? Is that the intent?
That is the intent, yes.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Miller, it would be helpful if you would just clarify the liquor, since Councilmember Hellier brought up restaurants. I think it's important to clarify how the liquor side of this works.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to our city attorney as well, but it was staff's belief that absent further guidance from the state relating to liquor licensing, that it'd be premature to address that. It's our understanding that anything related to restaurants is probably going to be June 1st at the earliest. We will have 2 opportunities to meet as a council before then, once at your work session next week, and then one on June 1st actually as well. We are hopeful that the state is going to provide some guidance this week. At least that's what the governor has stated in terms of how they are going to move forward with other things that have not been addressed yet. And so at this time, we would like to wait and see on the liquor licensing aspect of things.
I actually had 2 conversations with restaurant owners today that were very pleased to hear that we were taking a proactive approach or that we were looking at taking a proactive approach with this type of action tonight. And I mentioned to them that I thought the way this would play out would be that the liquor licenses would need to be individually handled. And they were both very comfortable with that. Just wanted to share that comment. Other comments, questions, council? Hellier.
I would just say to the liquor license about individual basis, we should think about potentially if there's a some sort of like blanket ordinance that can comply. I think if we're having to go through and review every single liquor license for every establishment time, we might be bogged down. So my hope is that we can try to create a uniform standard. So.
That would be my preference too, Councilmember Hellier. I don't want to be bringing each of these back before the city council every time, unless that's what we have to do. But we'll continue to monitor that, and if we need to, we'll bring something forward.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And
yes,
I'll just make a motion if you're ready for that.
Sure.
Move to approve or adopt the policy for temporary outdoor customer service areas.
And is that with the addition of the local emergency provision?
Yes, as amended, as orally amended during our discussion to local ordinance changes, or emergencies, I should say.
And there's a second. And I will ask for further discussion, but I neglected to ask if there was anyone on the line from the public that would like to comment on this matter. And at this time, I will take those comments if there is anyone. And we handle these just like citizen comments. Please provide your name and address for the record at the start of your comment. Is there anyone on the line that would like to comment regarding this matter? Hearing no one, council, any further discussion on there is a motion and a second? Hearing none, Shar, roll call, please.
Lee,
Aye.
Volk,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
Hellier.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The motion carries, and thank you, staff, for your good work on this. I appreciate it. We'll move on to the third item, which is related to our meeting dates and approach that we're looking at using. We as a council have already decided to have our work session as a hybrid meeting. And Mr. Miller, I think if you could share a little more about how this has come together. You folks have done work as staff to figure out how to do all this, and then we might want to talk a little bit about June meetings.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor and Council, you did discuss at your last meeting about holding the May 26th council work session as a hybrid in-person meeting where the council would be in person, but you would allow public input via remote purposes. Our staff has developed a way that we'd be able to do that. And so basically the city council would be here in the chambers along with any appropriate staff. Just before the meeting is that I was actually spacing out the council chairs to see if we could make it work, and I think we can. What we would then do is, along with the meeting notice, we would also publish an Amazon Chime call-in, just like we are doing right now. I would have that meeting up on my computer while I'm also here in the chambers. So if anybody wanted to participate remotely, they could do so. And then when they wanted to participate, they would be able to hear the whole meeting through the Chime system, the remote system. And then if they wanted to participate, they could do so and that audio would be piped through the speakers here at City Hall as well. There might be a little bit of a delay, just like there is when we do this, but we feel like it's a way that it could work. And so if that's adequate to the council, we'll plan on doing that. And then staff would like to talk about how we want to move forward with our June meetings, because we are going to have to start to publicize those meetings. I haven't talked to staff to see if we have any public hearings scheduled coming up, but if we do, we would need to post and publicize how those meetings are going to be held. So we just need to hear from council on how you want to move forward with June meetings as well.
Okay. Any questions on how our work session will be handled? And then I'm open for comments, thoughts as far as June meetings.
Mayor,
Hellier.
assuming that everything goes well next week at the City Hall, I would recommend that we continue meeting there for June. If we run into some technology issue or something else that we weren't anticipating, maybe it would make sense to switch back to just the chime. But my hope is that we can continue to meet on a regular basis back at City Hall.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Other comments? Councilmember Volk.
So we would either, I guess I'm comfortable with either continuing with the call in on the time for the regular meetings too. However, by June 1st, our first meeting, maybe we'll have some more direction as to where we're going. And I would like to see us be able to come up with some sort of way in the audience for people to be able to come into a meeting and come to the podium if they need to.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wheeler or Councilmember Lee, do you have a comment? Lee?
I think regardless, the hybrid model is going to have to be a solution, just because people are going to continue not to be comfortable coming to City Hall. And so first and foremost, I think we need to make that work. And hopefully we have a good run through next week on that. As for opening City Hall to the public to come in, I think we can make it work as well. But I think the first priority is making the hybrid model work.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would just add that I agree with, I think it's important to continue the hybrid model into June. I've had a number of people that have communicated to me their concerns in terms of actively putting themselves in a position of being at risk of picking up the virus. And I respect that. They may have their own issues for that. Could be a health issue, or simply that they're caring for their elderly parent or something. So there are some clearly valid reasons, and people want to take, I want people to be able to take their own individual responsibility. So continuing the hybrid model into June is what I would appreciate. I think we can be on site with appropriate distancing as we do for the work session. And as Councilmember Hellier said, unless we run into some major technical issue next week as we do the work session, I think we should move through June with the hybrid model, and then we continue to adapt from there, is what my thought is. So I think we're all in a pretty similar place. Councilmember Volk.
Just a question, Mr. Miller, what about the people that maybe are giving a presentation on their preliminary plat, something like that? Are they going to be on the chime, or would they be allowed to come to City Hall and present in person?
Well, I guess I was looking for some direction from the council. I think especially, I guess that's my question to the council. Do you want to have City Hall open up for the council meetings before we're open for other things in general. And I think we'd be fine either way. We could certainly open it up and space things out here in the chambers. But I think we could also provide an option for anybody who had to make a presentation to do it remotely as well. If that could be the hybrid of the hybrid, I guess, if that was okay.
Councilmember Lee, then we'll come back to you, Councilmember Volk.
Yeah, if we're looking for direction on opening City Hall for city council meetings before opening up for other operations, I'm in favor of being able to do that for our meetings.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Volk.
I'm also in favor of opening up council chambers, but always having the hybrid availability for those persons. I just want everybody to be comfortable, to make their personal choice. And that way we are accommodating all persons in our community.
So I agree with that too. And I guess the question for me around that is, I'm not sure in terms of city hall chambers, how many guests we can accommodate in the room with appropriate physical distancing. And we're going to need to communicate that there's a maximum number that can be in that room. And so we'll need to figure out how to do that. Councilmember Volk.
So as long as, Mr. Miller, that you have the direction of where we think we're heading, maybe we could follow up a little bit more how that would look when we get to our work session next week. Would that be, is that enough time to kind of come up with those numbers, et cetera?
Yeah, that's fine. Actually, as I'm looking at the chambers now, what I think we might want to do is even as you're here on this upcoming Monday, remove the chairs here to where it's set up to where there's a 6-foot distance between chairs, so you can kind of see kind of what the capacity might be. And then I think, staff usually has a pretty good sense on if there's an item on the agenda that's going to have a large audience. And if that's the case, then we can maybe develop some strategies on how we do that. And I don't anticipate anything like that coming up in the near future, but we can certainly address that as it's coming up.
Okay, Hellier.
Sorry, not to micromanage. I wonder if there's maybe a flow where we can have, if there's multiple presenters, having the doors open where, they're kind of watching on the TVs that are out in the area, and then we can swap out people as necessary. Whether it's a plaid or some sort of license or whatever. So.
Yeah, I think we can come up with some strategies on that.
Okay. I think Councilmember Volk, your suggestion is a good suggestion. I think let's let Mr. Miller and staff evaluate this. We can look at it next week when we're there for the work session. From an agenda planning standpoint, we're going with the hybrid model. We'll be at City Hall. We'll run the hybrid. And there might just need to be some clarification about capacity as we move forward. So we can talk a little more about that next week at the work session and get updated in terms of that. Does that sound comfortable to everyone, Council? Okay, sounds good. Well, Mr. Miller, do you have all the direction you need with that?
I do, thank you.
Okay. We'll go to our final item in this section, which is a resolution that was originally submitted by Councilmember Hellier, and as Mr. Miller mentioned earlier, on the web, in the materials, there's actually a second updated resolution. And I'm going to start with you, Councilmember Hellier, just to describe a little bit about the background here, and then Councilmember Lee, who I believe has been involved in this, can share a little bit as well in terms of the revision.
Sure, thanks. So, my intent last week when I drafted this was, well, a couple. One, the first was really to reinforce our support as a council for our businesses and our places of worship as we get closer to reopening. Also, what I wrote, I don't think was very clear. And so I do, Councilmember Lee wrote something that was more concise, and I think what we should discuss as well. But, my intent was sending a signal to organizations in the city that they should open as long as they're following the guidance related to physical distancing and whatever seems to fit into their business model for what they need to be doing. And so that was kind of the message that I wanted to convey with this resolution. And so I don't think we need to necessarily withdraw mine. We'll just skip over it. And I think we should talk about Councilmember Lee's if that's the right process. So.
Okay. I think that process would be fine. And Councilmember Lee, would you like to describe a little bit about your thinking with your revision?
Sure. So I, like many of you, I think I've received lots of comments and I received a few specific comments requesting that council not enforce the governor's orders. And I think that sparked in me a good conversation, because it's important for those individuals to know that I don't think that's an option. And I don't want to put our city in that place. But what we can do, and one of the tools we do have, is for advocating and taking a stance for the governor to understand that we believe that there can be more done. And I thought that the resolution should be a little more focused towards specifically the conversations that I've received about all businesses having the opportunity to flourish in Lakeville. And right now it seems a little cherry picked, and there are some businesses that don't have that opportunity right now and are being restricted. But that I believe with the amount of time they've had to plan for their own business, I think there are ways that they can manage the COVID-19 pandemic the same way as the businesses that are currently being allowed to operate. So that is a slimmed down version of what was initially talked about, and so this is what I wrote in response to that.
Okay. Comments, questions, Councilmember Volk.
And you both did a really great job putting your points out there, and the slimmed down version is very good, concise. So somebody try to help me out with what is the purpose. So is the purpose that in as much as the governor is receiving emails, phone calls, et cetera, from all over the state from businesses, is the purpose to have the city put a little extra pressure on the governor to get things opened up? I mean, it's a very benign, in my opinion, that's just my opinion, resolution for something that's already going to happen here in the next few weeks. So if you can just help me to understand how this helps to resolve all those phone calls that we've been getting, because really it doesn't. I mean, we're still waiting on the governor when people were trying to get the city to do something about something. So thank you.
Thank you. Comments?
Well, Councilmember Volke, you're right. There's not, and I thought the same thing when the initial draft came through, because I thought about what does this practically do for the city, and it doesn't practically do anything, but I think puts a stake in the ground to say that we do believe that we need to expedite and have a sense of urgency about this, because we know specific businesses that are hurting in Lakeville, and there are a lot of conversations that are happening offline, but at least when we have those conversations, we can say from a city council standpoint, we believe as a city, we need to do more and do it sooner. So to me, it was about just expressing the sense of urgency and expressing the sense of unfairness that at least I'm seeing in how certain businesses are treated over others.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lee. Hellier.
To that point a little bit, I don't have that much confidence based in what the governor said last week when he rolled this back and what he said subsequently, especially related to restaurants in June 1st, where, you know, at first it sounded like, okay, June 1st was going to be this target date. Everything's going to be able to open up under these new guidelines. And since then, it seems like there's been a little bit of backpedaling on, well, the goal is to have something in place that some may open that on that date. And it's of my opinion that if we're opening some, we should be opening all of them. And in particular, I think about some of the other smaller businesses that we can't wait any longer than June 1st, whether it's barber, hair salon. You know, these are businesses that have now been with no income for a considerable long time. And so practically speaking, at this moment, we're not talking about enforcement and what we're not enforcing. But I think on behalf of these business owners and people that their livelihood depends on it, I think it's important for us to say something. But in particular, again, because I don't think, unless, you know, I could be proven wrong on Wednesday when these guidelines are supposed to come out, but I don't feel comfortable with some of the back and forth message, and business owners I've talked to are having difficulty even interpreting what the governor had said last Wednesday. So that's kind of the position that I approach this discussion, that it's to put a stake in the ground to be a lot more concise and clear about it.
Thank you. Councilmember Volk.
So I agree with all those points. I agree that with everything you said. To me, this, let's see, I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. This is almost like a feel-good effort on our part. And so I don't know, maybe it's a baby step. So if Councilmember Hellier, you're correct, and we don't keep moving in the direction of getting all these businesses open, I guess we'll have to have another talk. And maybe we can talk a little bit more at it again at our work session, since COVID-19 will be part of an update, and we'll wait for the next update from our governor, et cetera. But to me, I feel bad. I'm going to vote for this resolution, and I'm thankful for how you guys put it together and how well worded it is and respectful it is. But I don't feel like that I'm doing anything but putting a yes vote on something. It doesn't feel like I'm actually helping my business community. And so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments. I would like to answer your question. I do think that there is one tangible way that this does make a difference, and at least I think it will help all of us. I as mayor have the privilege to be involved in certain other conversations with other mayors, both with leadership people from the state, like Steve Grove from DEED, for example. And I think for me to be at the table and say that we as a council have taken this action, it does add a little bit more emphasis. And I appreciate that it's not like a huge step, but I do think there is tangible ways that for us as council members to be able to represent our city and say we've taken this action together, can be helpful to us over this next week, particularly if the governor steps back from and the concerns that Councilmember Hellier manifests themselves in some way. So I do think there is some help to it from my perspective, and I'll be voting for the resolution as it was written by Councilmember Lee, if that ends up being the motion. So other comments, thoughts? I am going to go to the public here in a minute. Is there any other comments or thoughts before I do that? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. Is there any anybody in our meeting from the public that would like to speak to this particular matter?
Yes.
Yes, please state your name and your address. And this functions just like citizen comments where we allow up to 3 minutes. And you can go now, sir.
Great, thank you. My name is Brian McKinney. I am one of the owners of Ex-Hockey Products Training Facility. Our address is 17650 Juniper Path in Lakeville. We're in the old Schneiderman's building. Just wanted to, I've been listening in. I've spoken to several members about our situation. We're a very somewhat rare situation in that we're one of 6 privately owned ice arenas in the state of Minnesota, which is a tough enough business to run as is, with all the municipal and city rinks and that sort of thing. As mentioned, we've been shut down since March, with no ability to run any, generate any revenue. We don't sell anything. We have an ice rink and training facility, of which majority of what we do is training. We work all winter with the Lakeville Hockey Association, the Farmington Hockey Association, and then in the spring, summer, and fall, we deal with individuals. We've been in a situation where we have a 25,000 square foot building we just moved into 3 years ago. We were downtown Lakeville for 10 years. In 2017, we moved into the old Schneiderman's building and invested well over $500,000 to outfit that location for us to move into. We were lucky enough to get the PPP to help our 4 full-time employees. But with that size of facility and the cost to keep an ice rink maintained, even though it's not being used, it ran out quickly. So we're just simply asking for anything additional that can help, because there's a couple of members that I've talked to, and Dave Olson being one of them, who's kind of been with us, helping us since day one in 2007 when we opened. It's not looking like we're going to be able to make it past June 1st if we cannot start to do at least the bare minimum, in which, in our case, we have a well laid out plan with a 25,000 square foot facility to run just individual training with no more than 8 people in the building at a time. Players coming in fully dressed, not allowed to stay, locker rooms not being utilized. Our general managers put together a very good plan in the hopes that every 2 weeks that went by that we'd at least get a chance. So just wanted to throw that out, that you do have a business owner here that has been hit very hard by it, and anything you can do. We appreciate everything that I've heard so far in this whole meeting all night. Anything that you can do to help us, like others, I'm sure, in the city that have been completely shut down, and honestly, in our case, probably cannot make it much longer. So, thank you.
Mayor, you're on mute.
Brian, thank you for your comments. Heart goes out to you, and I know it's a really tough time. Council, and appreciate you listening into the meeting and sharing your comment with us. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to make a comment regarding this matter? Okay, I am not hearing anyone. Any further comments or questions, council, or would there be a motion?
Mayor?
Yes.
Motion to adopt resolution of City Council in urgent support of further steps to reopen Minnesota's economy.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Shar, roll call, please.
Lee,
Aye.
Volk. Aye. Anderson,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
Hellier.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We will stay the course and support our local business and work on ways that we can continue to do that. And we're hopeful that we will move forward here midweek I think, Luke, you said it was Wednesday. We're supposed to get an update
The 20th.
from the
correct.
governor. And we'll press on. Thank you very much. Is there any further questions or comments, council, regarding COVID-19 matters? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we'll move on to our next items on the agenda, which are unfinished business and new business. Council, anything for this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to announcements. Mr. Miller, any announcements for tonight?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay. Council, any announcements? My announcements are our next meeting. So next week we have our city council work session, which is Tuesday night, May 26th at 6:30 p.m. With the hybrid style of meeting. So we will be at City Hall and you'll be able to access electronically as well. And that meeting is at 6:30 and we're on Tuesday night because of the Memorial Day holiday. And then our next city council meeting, regular meeting, will be Monday night, June 1st at 6:30 p.m. as well, with a hybrid meeting, and we will be at City Hall. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. Shar, roll call, please.
Volk,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Wheeler,
Aye.
Hellier,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
The motion to adjourn carries. Thank you, everyone, for a good meeting. Have a good evening.
Right.
Good night.